Welcome back to my channel. Every time you react, they win. Every time you stay calm, they lose direction. You don't need to yell. You don't need to argue. You don't even need to cut them off because toxic people don't feed on your presence. They feed on your reaction. The real power isn't in fighting back. It's in becoming so calm, so centered that no storm can reach you. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed." Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. Today, we're not talking about surviving toxic people. We're talking about becoming untouchable. Not by closing the door on them, but by closing the gate to your mind. Let's begin. Here's a hard truth. Most people avoid. Toxic people are not your biggest problem. Your reaction to them is you can leave your job cut off, that friend move cities, or even go no contact with someone in your own family. But here's what no one tells you. You can't run from what you haven't mastered. You can change your environment 10 times. But if your emotional immune system is still weak, someone new will trigger you the same way, and that's exactly where most people stay stuck thinking, external change will fix an internal weakness. Epictetus said it best. It's not things that upset us, but our judgments about them. Toxic people only have as much power as you give them. Their real weapon isn't their voice. It's your reaction to their voice. They win, not because they are stronger, but because you haven't yet trained yourself to be mentally stronger. A real-world example. Let's say you have a colleague. We'll call her Karen. Every meeting she takes subtle jabs at you. She makes comments like, "Well, some of us double-check the reports. You know, it's about you. You feel it in your gut. Your chest tightens. You want to snap back. You want to prove something, but here's the shift. You don't. You breathe. You look her in the eye, not with anger, but with stillness. You keep your voice level, your body relaxed. You continue speaking with clarity and focus. That's not weakness. That's mastery. That's emotional intelligence in action. That's Stoicism and what happens next. She escalates. She jabs harder. She starts raising her voice. Why? Because your calmness exposes her chaos. People like Karen don't want the truth. They want attention. And when you stop being reactive, you stop being her audience. Why this matters most: people live like emotional puppets tied to the strings of anyone who knows how to push the right button. One sarcastic comment ruins their whole day. One toxic text triggers hours of overthinking. One manipulative guilt trip makes them doubt their self-worth. But the Stoics taught something radical. No one can control your mind unless you hand them the keys. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to defend your character. You don't need to win the argument. What you do need is discipline. Discipline to stay calm in the face of provocation. Discipline to choose peace over petty fights. Discipline to protect your energy, like your life depends on it. Because it does take away. The smartest way to deal with toxic people isn't to fight them. It's to starve them of your attention, your emotions, your energy. They survive on your reactions. They thrive in your overthinking. They manipulate through your need for validation, cut the supply, they vanish. Mental strength isn't loud, it's silent. It's the ability to stay still in a room full of noise. It's the ability to let someone's chaos pass through you without leaving a scratch. You don't need to change them. You just need to change how much access they have to you. And that begins with your response or the lack of it. Because the moment you stop reacting, you stop bleeding power. And that's when you become dangerous in the best possible way. Let's get something clear. Toxic. People are not powerful. They don't have some secret weapon. They're not strategic masterminds. They don't possess anything you don't except one thing. Practice. They've spent their entire lives perfecting the art of emotional manipulation. They've learned what tones create guilt, what silences provoke anxiety, what buttons trigger insecurity. They don't even need to think about it. It's instinctual. It's muscle memory. You're just reacting, not because you're weak, but because you're untrained. Emotional combat training. Think about it like this. If you walk into a boxing ring with a trained fighter, you're going to get hit a lot. Not because they're a monster, but because you never learned to block. You never learned to move. You never trained your reflexes. Same with toxic people. You're walking into an emotional battlefield without armor, without preparation, without strategy, and then blaming them for the bruises. But Stoics don't blame the opponent. They train for the battle. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength if someone's comment can ruin your mood. If a single message can derail your day, then the issue isn't them. It's your lack of emotional disciple." Chooses silence with intention. In a world addicted to noise, silence is mistaken for surrender. But if you truly understand power, real power, you'll know this. The strongest presence in any room is often the one who says the least. We've been conditioned to equate silence with defeat. If you don't clap back, you lost. If you don't explain yourself, they win. If you don't speak up, you're weak, but silence isn't passive. It's strategic. It's stoic. It's a conscious decision to not give your energy to chaos, the psychology of silence. Toxic people are addicted to reaction. They thrive on drama. They need your words, your explanations, your defenses because it gives them a role to play. The victim, the martyr, the misunderstood genius. When you stop talking, you cut the script, and suddenly they don't know what to do. They scramble. They get louder. They lash out because your silence exposes their emptiness. Seneca once said, "He who does not know how to be silent does not know how to speak." In other words, until you've mastered restraint, your words mean nothing. Silence isn't weakness. It's emotional intelligence in motion. Real-life power. Imagine this, you're at a family dinner. Your uncle, the one who always jokes at your expense, says something like, "Still single? Maybe you're just too picky for your own good." Everyone laughs, all eyes on you. You feel the heat rise in your chest, the old you. You'd make a sarcastic jab back, maybe storm out, maybe explain your life choices for the 100th time. But this version of you sip your drink, you smile, not passive-aggressively, but peacefully, and you say nothing. You let the comment hang in the air where it belongs. You stay calm, you stay composed, and in doing so, you dominate the room without raising your voice. That's mental toughness, that's spiritual clarity. That's the energy of someone who's done playing small to please others. Why silence scares them. Here's what toxic people can't stand when their bait doesn't work, when you don't flinch, when you don't justify, when you don't react. Because now they're forced to sit with something they've avoided their entire lives, their own noise. Silence makes people confront themselves, and those who can't face who they are will always try to pull noise out of you. But you're not here to be noise. You're here to be clarity, stillness, discipline, power. Takeaway. Silence doesn't mean you're ignoring the issue. It means you're refusing to give it life. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to meet them on their level because you're no longer on their level. Let fools argue. Let the undisciplined shout. Let the empty. Provoke a wise man. Watch as a strong one waits, and you're not reacting. Because you're afraid you're silent. Because you've trained for peace. That's not weakness. That's the highest form of strength. Here's the paradox. The calmer you become, the more chaotic they get. At first, your silence confuses them, then it irritates them, and eventually it terrifies them. Why? Because toxic people don't fear confrontation. They fear irrelevance. And when you stop reacting, stop engaging, stop explaining, they start to realize something they never expected. They don't control you anymore. What happens when you go, still toxic? People are like fire. They need oxygen to burn. Your anger is oxygen. Your guilt is oxygen. Your need to be understood is oxygen. But when you stop feeding the fire, it flickers. And in that flicker, something unsettling happens. They feel the grip slipping, so they escalate. They say more cruel things. They twist the narrative harder. They reach into your past and drag it into the present. They insult what you love, what you've healed from what you've tried to forget. It's not personal, it's tactical. They're losing ground and they know it. That's why they panic, because without your pain they have no control. Without your reaction, they are nothing. Real life. Example. Think of someone who used to have emotional power over you. Maybe it was an ex-parent, a friend. Every time they reached out, you spiraled, whether in anger, confusion, or guilt. But one day, you don't respond. No explanation, no apology, no emotional open door, just silence. Suddenly they become anxious. They double text. They play the victim. They accuse you of changing or acting. Brand new. They're not checking in. They're checking your boundaries, testing if your peace is real or just temporary. This is where most people crack. They confuse chaos for connection. They think someone fighting for their attention means they still care, but Stoics don't mistake noise for love. They understand the storm gets louder when it's dying. The deeper psychological truth. Here's what's really happening. They are no longer dealing with the same version of you. They're trying to argue with your old self, the one who needed validation, the one who feared rejection, the one who over-explained everything just to keep the peace. But now they're facing stillness, and stillness reflects everything they've avoided in themselves: insecurity, emptiness, weak. Even when you were the one hurt. What's happening, you didn't cut the attachment. You cut the access, but left the bond alive. You're still trying to win their imaginary approval, still waiting for an apology that will never come, still hoping they'll wake up and say you were right. But here's the hard truth. They already know. They just don't care. And once you accept that, truly accept it, you reclaim every inch of your emotional power. Letting go does not equal losing people. Fear detachment, because it feels like losing, like surrendering, like giving up. But Stoics don't let go to lose, they let go to win inwardly. Detachment isn't cold, it's clear. It's choosing not to chase closure from people committed to misunderstanding you. You don't need one last conversation. You don't need one last explanation. You don't need them to admit anything. You need peace. You need self-worth. That doesn't depend on external recognition. You need emotional discipline to say, I am no longer available for this cycle. Takeaway: cutting someone off is easy, but cutting off the mental replay, the rumination, the guilt, the imaginary what-ifs, that's where the real work begins. True, Detachment is when you no longer need their reaction to validate your peace when they become just a chapter. Not the entire book when their name is met with indifference, not emotion to be free is to no longer be haunted. And the moment you cut the invisible string, not with hate, not with revenge, but with clarity and self-respect, that's when you finally truly walk away. There's a reason toxic people hold power over you. It's not because they're smarter, not because they're stronger, and definitely not because they're right. It's because a part of you still craves their approval. You want them to recognize your effort to validate your goodness, to admit they were wrong, to say you didn't deserve that. But here's the truth. Most people don't want to face. You don't need their approval. You need your own respect. The root of manipulation, emotional dependency. Toxic people don't manipulate you with facts. They manipulate you through your emotional need for validation. They sense your insecurities and aim right at them. They dangle their approval like a reward, then yank it away when you don't conform. They use silence, sarcasm, and guilt as tools, not because they misunderstand you, but because they know exactly what keeps you hooked. And what keeps you hooked is the illusion that if you just try harder, they'll finally treat you right. But that illusion is not love. It's control. And as long as you keep seeking their validation, you're putting your self-worth on sale. Real-life reflection. Think back to the last time someone hurt you emotionally. You knew they crossed a line. You knew you didn't deserve it. But instead of walking away, you explained yourself. You pleaded, you waited for a maybe why, because deep down you believed that if they approved of you again, you'd finally feel okay. But here's the Stoic reality. No one can give you self-worth. It must be built, not borrowed. Their approval isn't peace. It's a drug, temporary, unreliable, and dangerously addictive. What self-respect actually looks like. Self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It's quiet. It's firm. It's walking away without making a scene. It's not replying to that manipulative message not because you're bitter, but because you're clear. It's recognizing that you do not need to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. And once you truly internalize that, everything changes. You stop seeking closure. You stop fighting to be seen. You stop lowering your standards just to keep a connection alive. You no longer trade your peace for someone else's comfort. The Stoic alternative to approval. The Stoics didn't beg for recognition. They didn't chase external praise. They anchored themselves to virtue, not validation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. Approval is unstable. It can be taken away, but self-respect is internal, unshakable, non-negotiable. That's what you build when you hold your boundary, even when it's lonely, when you choose silence over arguing, when you walk away with your dignity intact, and no one can take that from you. Take away. You don't need them to tell you you're enough. You need to believe it before they ever do, and especially if they never will. You don't need their attention. You need to stop giving them the power to decide how you feel. You don't need to prove your value to anyone who couldn't see it in the first place. You don't need their applause. You need to stop performing, because when you finally choose self-respect over approval, you stop being controlled. You stop being manipulated. You stop bending yourself to fit a mold that was never made for you, and that's when something powerful happens. You become whole again, not because they finally gave you what you needed, but because you gave it to yourself. You've been hurt. No. When they realize they can't reach you anymore, and that moment doesn't come from revenge, anger, or proving your point, it comes from the quietest shift of all non-reaction, the choice to not answer the insult, the decision to stay silent in the storm, the refusal to make your inner peace negotiable, because when you stop reacting, you stop bleeding power. You stop playing their game. You stop being controlled. And that is when you become dangerous in the best way. You rise, you thrive. You stay calm, and they fade into background noise because the smartest way to deal with toxic people was never to beat them. It was to become someone they could no longer touch. So now, you know, the smartest way to deal with toxic people is not revenge, not arguments, not proving your worth to someone who never valued it in the first place. It's becoming untouchable, not because you blocked them, not because you burned a bridge, but because you built a fortress within yourself that no one can break through. You didn't destroy them. You didn't even need to. You simply chose not to let them live inside your head, rentré. And in doing so, you became something rare, something unshakable, someone who no longer reacts because you finally remembered who you are. Let them perform. Let them twist the narrative. Let them scream into the void. You're gone, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and in that absence, they lose all power. The fire dies when you stop feeding it. If this message resonated with you, if you felt seen, empowered, or even challenged, then this is just the beginning of your inner transformation. Leave a comment and tell us what's one toxic situation you're finally ready to stop reacting to. Let your healing inspire someone else. Subscribe to Think Stoic 101 for weekly guidance on building the strongest version of yourself from the inside out. And turn on the notification bell because peace isn't just a mood, it's a mindset. And every week we sharpen it together. Remember, you don't win by reacting. You win by rising.